Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving deep into the strategic playbook for the modern chief information officer, the CIO, especially now, in the era of artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
For any leader, tasked with guiding their organization through this massive transformation, the mandate seems pretty clear. Adapt your architecture, redefine security, and crucially, prove the financial value of, well, every algorithm you deploy.
That's absolutely right. And the challenge for the CIO isn't just, buying the latest AI tech. It's actually operationalizing it, making it work securely, compliantly, and making it scale.
Right.
So our mission today really is to distill this huge complexity down into something clearer. We're extracting what we see as the most critical strategic imperatives, and they fall into basically three interconnected domains.
Okay, what are those?
First, cybersecurity and AI risk. That's a big one. Second, delivering measurable value, getting past those pilots. And third, architecting the data foundation. Because, well, AI is only as good as its data.
It sounds like a strategic triangle for the CIO. And we have to start, I think, at the sharpest point, the most immediate concern, which is risk.
Mm-hmm.
AI. It really is the ultimate double-edged sword, isn't it?
It really is.
It's the shield protecting the organization, but in the wrong hands, it's like the most powerful new weapon for attackers.
Precisely. And the core paradox here, the thing we really need to get our heads around, is defining the modern threat surface. Look, AI is rapidly moving the security operations center, the SOC, from just reacting.
Yeah, the old ways.
To being proactive, even predictive. But at the same time, the organization's own AI models and the data they're constantly consuming, they're becoming the primary attack surface itself.
So the strategy has to shift. It's not just defending the perimeter against AI threats anymore.
Exactly. It's about defending the logic and the integrity of your own internal AI models. That's the new frontier.
Okay, let's start with the defense side then. How is AI actually transforming the SOC? Moving us beyond that legacy signature-based detection, which, let's be honest, was kind of obsolete the moment the first zero-day attack hit.
Yeah, it's a fundamental shift. It's moving from looking for known pattern signatures to looking at behavioral analysis.
Okay, behavioral. What does that mean in practice?
Well, traditional security relied on comparing what it saw against a big database of known threats. Think of it like looking for a specific criminal using only, a handful of old mugshots.
Right. If the attacker used a new trick, a new exploit.
It sailed right through.
Right.
But AI changes the game because it can process just unbelievable volumes of data. We're talking logs, network traffic, endpoint data, all these massive different data sets, and it does it in real time.
So it's the scale and the speed.
It's the scale, the speed, and the intelligence.
Yeah.
It doesn't look for a specific signature. It looks for an anomaly in the expected behavior profile.
Can you give an example?
Sure. So instead of detecting the actual code of some known ransomware, the AI observes that, say, a standard user workstation is suddenly encrypting thousands of files simultaneously.
Which a person wouldn't normally do.
Exactly. At a rate that's, statistically impossible for normal human activity. The AI recognizes that behavior as malicious, whether the specific exploit code is known or completely new. And that ability to detect the unknown, the zero-day stuff, that's paramount.
Well, wait a second. If the AI is identifying behavior, doesn't that introduce maybe new risks, like false positives, or even bias in the model itself? How do you even audit behavior detection compared to just matching a signature?
That is a critical challenge, and you've hit on a key point.
Yeah.
The governance around these behavioral models has to be incredibly strict. Because unlike a simple signature, which is, yes or no, a behavioral score is probabilistic. It's a likelihood. So if the model is trained mainly on activity from, say, the engineering department, it might incorrectly flag legitimate activity from the finance department as suspicious. That's a form of bias, and it can really disrupt business operations.
So what's the answer? Constant vigilance.
Constant, rigorous testing and retraining. You have to keep refining the model based on real-world feedback and diverse data.
Yeah.
It's an ongoing process.
Okay, that brings us neatly to alert fatigue. We know human security analysts are just drowning in alerts.
Drowning is the right word.
Our sources highlight a pretty staggering figure. Something like 59% of organizations get over 500 cloud security alerts every day.
Yeah, and many of those are false positives.
Yeah.
The human element, the analysts, they just break down under that sheer volume. You can't possibly investigate everything thoroughly.
Which is where AI becomes, well, essential for automation.
Absolutely. It's the essential engine driving security orchestration, automation, and response, SOR platforms. AI automates that initial alert triage. It filters out the noise, the false positives, And it presents the human analysts only with the high-confidence, high-priority events.
So it frees them up.
It frees them up, and more importantly, when a real threat is identified, the SOR platform can instantly execute a predefined response playbook,
Like what?
like automatically isolating an infected laptop from the network, maybe revoking the user's credentials temporarily, initiating a full system scan, that kind of immediate automated action.
And the impact is significant.
Hugely significant. Our sources suggest that kind of automation can cut the mean time to respond to an incident by as much as 70%. That's massive in limiting damage.
Okay, a 70% reduction is huge. But what does that mean for the human analysts then? What's their new role? Does this create a different kind of skill gap we need to worry about?
Absolutely, it does. The analyst's role shifts dramatically. They move from being sort of a triage specialist, bogged down in sorting mundane alerts,
Yeah, filtering noise.
to becoming a more strategic threat hunter and, importantly, a governance expert for the AI itself. They need to understand how the AI model is making its decisions. They need to figure out if an automated playbook failed and why, and then design more effective automation for the future.
So the skill set changes. It's less operational reaction, more strategic threat modeling and AI oversight.
Precisely. It's a higher level skill set, definitely.
And there's also the proactive side you mentioned, vulnerability management.
Right. That's the third pillar of the AI-powered defense. AI can analyze source code, network configurations, looking for weaknesses before they could be exploited by attackers.
Finding the holes before the bad guys do.
Exactly. And crucially, it doesn't just find them. It assigns a risk score to every single vulnerability it discovers.
Why is the risk score so important?
Because you might have, say, 1,000 vulnerabilities across your systems. That's overwhelming. But the AI tells you, look, these 50 vulnerabilities are highly exploitable, and they exist on your most critical assets, your crown jewels.
Ah, so it helps prioritize.
It completely optimizes resource allocation. It ensures your limited patching budget and your team's time are spent securing the digital vault, not, the virtual broom closet. You focus on what matters most.
Okay, now we have to flip the script. Because the adversaries, the attackers, they aren't just sitting still, are they?
Not at all.
And this is where it gets, frankly, really interesting and maybe a bit scary. Because they are leveraging the exact same AI technology to make their attacks faster, bigger, and scarier.
It's the automation of malice, essentially. Adversaries are using AI across the entire cyber attack lifecycle, from reconnaissance to execution.
And it lowers the barrier to entry, right? Makes sophisticated attacks easier for less skilled actors.
Definitely. And it makes the attacks themselves much more sophisticated. We're way past the era of those simple, grammatically awkward phishing emails that were easy to spot.
Yeah, those are almost charming in their badness.
Right. Now we're dealing with AI-driven social engineering.
So the phishing email isn't just grammatically perfect now. It actually sounds exactly like my boss or a trusted colleague.
Precisely. Generative AI can scrape a target's public data, social media, LinkedIn, company website, past emails if they've been breached, and learn their specific communication style.
Wow.
It can mimic their vocabulary, their tone, even reference current projects or events mentioned online. It crafts these incredibly personalized messages, email, SMS, maybe even a chat message that are almost indistinguishable from the real thing.
Which just erodes our natural human suspicion. We're trained to look for the errors, but the errors are gone.
They're gone. And the risk escalates dramatically with things like deepfakes for deception. This is where it gets really insidious.
This is the scenario where, say, someone in the finance department gets a phone call.
Yeah.
And the voice on the other end sounds exactly like the CEO, instructing them to make an urgent, slightly unusual wire transfer to a new account.
The employee hears the CEO's voice. Maybe there's some background noise that sounds like the office. They comply because it sounds legitimate. The money's wired, and it's gone before anyone realizes it was completely synthetic audio generated by AI.
That's terrifying. And we're seeing this happen in the real world, aren't we? These aren't just theoretical anymore.
Not at all. Look at the case studies our sources mention. That Activision incident in December 2023. Attackers used highly AI-crafted SMS phishing messages. They weren't generic. They were targeted. They managed to deceive an HR staff member, got past multi-factor authentication somehow.
How did they get past MFA?
The details are often murky, but it could involve tricking the user into approving an MFA push notification, or perhaps exploiting a vulnerability in the MFA process itself, maybe combined with the convincing social engineering. The point is, they got in and accessed the entire employee database. That level of targeted personalization shows the method works.
And the scale can be devastating. You mentioned Yum Brands earlier.
Yeah, the ransomware attack in January 2023, that wasn't just data theft, it disrupted physical operations. They had to temporarily close nearly 300 restaurants in the UK.
And AI played a role there too.
Reports suggest AI was used to automate the identification and exfiltration of the most high-value data first. Basically, the AI helped the attackers quickly find the most sensitive information to maximize their leverage for the ransom demand.
Okay, these incidents, they lead to what security experts are calling the nightmare scenario. This is the one that probably keeps CIOs awake at night.
It absolutely should. The deep concern here is that an attacker's AI manages to breach the perimeter, gets inside the corporate network,
Okay.
and then starts to communicate directly system to system with the victim organization's own internal AI systems.
Whoa. Like AI talking to AI.
Exactly. Imagine the attacker's AI subtly influencing the victim's own resource allocation AI to divert resources, or maybe manipulating a customer service chatbot AI to extract sensitive customer data, or even collaborating with an internal predictive maintenance AI to cause physical disruption.
So it's turning the organization's own technology against itself from the inside, using its own trusted systems as unwitting accomplices.
That's the nightmare. A collaborative internal attack orchestrated by AI, potentially moving at machine speed. It's a whole different level of threat.
Okay, that shifts the focus dramatically. We're moving from defending against external AI attacks to worrying about adversarial AI attacks that specifically target the logic of our own internal models.
Yes, this requires a fundamentally different defense posture. Your traditional firewalls and antivirus software, they don't really help here.
Why not?
Because these attacks aren't trying to breach the network in the traditional sense. They're attacking the underlying logic, the learning processes, the mathematical core of the machine learning ML models themselves.
Turning them into insider threats.
Potentially very potent insider threats because these models often have privileged access to data and decision-making systems. Suddenly, the CIO needs to start thinking of their own data science team's output, not just as an asset, but also as a potential security vulnerability.
Okay, so what are the main ways attackers can go after the model logic? How does this work across the AI lifecycle?
We tend to categorize these attacks based on when they occur in the model's life. First, you have evasion attacks, which happen after the model is already deployed and running.
Okay, post-deployment. What does an evasion attack look like?
The attacker makes subtle, often tiny modifications to the input data they feed the model. These changes are usually imperceptible to humans visually or acoustically, but they're specifically designed to confuse the model and cause it to make a wrong prediction or classification.
Right, this is the classic example people use, altering just a few pixels on a digital image of a stop sign.
Exactly.
A change a human driver wouldn't even notice, but it fools an autonomous vehicle's vision system into seeing it as, say, a speed limit sign or maybe just ignoring it altogether.
Precisely. The model's underlying logic gets tricked by the manipulated input, even though the model structure hasn't been changed at all.
Okay, that's evasion. What else?
Then we have data poisoning attacks. These are more insidious because they happen during the training phase of the model before it's even deployed.
How does that work?
This is often a strategic, long-term play. The attacker manages to inject carefully crafted, malicious data points into the massive data set being used to train the model.
So they corrupt the training data itself.
Yes. The goal might be subtle, maybe just to intentionally introduce a bias against a certain demographic in a loan application model, for instance. Or it could be more nefarious, installing a latent, hidden backdoor into the model.
A backdoor. What does that look like in an AI model?
It means the model might perform perfectly normally, passes all the tests, looks fine under all typical inputs. But if the attacker introduces a very specific, predetermined trigger input later on,
Like a secret keyword or something.
could be a secret phrase in text input, a specific pattern of pixels in an image, a unique sound frequency. If the model encounters that trigger, it instantly behaves maliciously. For example, imagine poisoning a financial fraud detection model so that it's trained to completely ignore any transaction associated with a specific secret sender ID.
So the model is corrupted, but the vulnerability only activates when the attacker uses their secret key.
Exactly. The backdoor stays hidden until the attacker chooses to exploit it. Very hard to detect proactively.
Okay, evasion, poisoning. What about large language models, the LLMs everyone's talking about? They have their own risks, right?
They certainly do. The big headline risk for LLMs is prompt injection.
Right. This is basically tricking the chatbot.
It's crafting specific input prompts, often complex ones, designed to bypass the safety protocols and ethical guardrails that the developers spent so much time building into the model.
Why is that such a big concern?
Because a successful prompt injection can cause the LLM to do things it's not supposed to. It might reveal sensitive information that was part of its training data, generate harmful or inappropriate content, or even execute unintended actions if it's connected to other systems.
Is there a more advanced version of this?
Yes, a highly sophisticated variant security researchers are talking about is the crescendo attack. Yeah, the attacker uses a multi-turn conversation, starting with seemingly benign prompts, but gradually escalating the requests in a clever sequence until they successfully bypass the guardrails. They jailbreak the model.
And what can they do then?
Potentially expose the underlying model parameters, extract proprietary training data, or manipulate its behavior in significant ways.
Okay, and finally, there's the risk of just stealing the model itself, intellectual property theft.
That's model extraction.
Oh,
This is different from stealing the code. Instead, an adversary interacts with a deployed model, usually one exposed via an API, by repeatedly sending it queries and carefully observing the outputs it provides.
and they learn how it works just from the inputs and outputs.
Over time, by analyzing enough of these input-output pairs, they can effectively reverse engineer the model's functionality. They can essentially create a copy, a replica model that performs very similarly.
So they're stealing the proprietary knowledge, the algorithms, the intelligence embedded in the model, the very intellectual property the CIO was hoping to monetize or use for competitive advantage.
Exactly. And they do it without ever needing to access the actual code base or the training data directly. It's theft via interaction. #DD, frameworks for proactive AI risk and compliance.
Okay, so if the threat surface is the model's logic itself, then traditional IT security tools, firewalls, intrusion detection, they're just not enough, are they?
No, they're necessary, but completely insufficient for these kinds of threats.
So CIOs need a different playbook, a systematic framework specifically for managing AI risk. Are there global standards or frameworks emerging to handle this complexity?
Yes, thankfully. The most authoritative and widely referenced playbook right now, especially in the US but influential globally, is the NIST AI Risk Management Framework, or AI RMF.
NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology.
That's the one. Now, in the US, it's technically voluntary, but is rapidly becoming the de facto standard because it provides a really comprehensive, structured approach for managing AI risks throughout the entire life cycle of an AI system.
And it's organized around key functions, right?
Yes, 4 core functions: govern, map, measure, and manage.
Okay, let's break those down briefly. Govern.
Govern is about establishing the right culture, defining clear roles and responsibilities, setting up accountability structures specifically for AI development and deployment. Who owns the risk? Who makes the decisions?
Makes sense.
Then map. Map is all about deeply understanding the context of the AI system. What's its intended purpose? Who are the users? What data does it rely on? And critically, what are the potential societal impacts, both positive and negative? You have to map out the entire ecosystem.
Okay. Measure, that sounds technical.
Measure is the technical heart of it. This involves continuous testing, evaluation, verification, and validation, PEVV, as NIST calls it. You're constantly measuring the model's performance, its fairness, its robustness against attacks, its security posture.
And finally, manage.
Manage is about putting the plans into action, implementing specific mitigation strategies for the risks you've identified and measured, and having clear incident response plans ready for when things inevitably go wrong with an AI system.
Okay, so based on that NIST framework, particularly the measure and manage parts, what are the practical, proactive mitigation strategies a CIO really needs to champion? What should they be doing now?
Proactivity is absolutely key. You can't wait for an attack. First, NIST strongly recommends continuous AI red teaming.
Red teaming, like ethical hacking for AI.
Exactly. It's the structured, authorized simulation of real-world adversarial attacks against your own AI models. You have to intentionally try to poison your training data, try to evade your deployed models, try to extract their logic specifically to find the vulnerabilities before the actual bad guys do.
Okay, actively attack yourself. What else?
Second is adversarial training. This is where, during the training phase, you intentionally expose the model to examples of those deceptive inputs you discovered during red teaming, like those slightly altered stop sign images.
So you teach the model to recognize and resist the tricks.
Precisely. You make the model inherently more robust and resilient against those specific types of attacks it's likely to face in the real world.
And what about stopping that model extraction, the IP theft we talked about? Are there architectural defenses for that?
Yes, absolutely. Besides monitoring usage patterns, two key architectural defenses are strict API rate limiting, just slowing down how many queries an attacker can make.
Makes it harder to gather enough data quickly.
Right. And the other one, which sounds technical but is important, is reducing output granularity.
Okay, let's clarify that. Reduced output granularity. What does that mean for, say, the C-suite listener?
Good question.
Ah.
It simply means you limit the amount of detailed information the AI system gives back to the user, or potentially the attacker, with each query.
How does that help?
Well, instead of the model outputting a highly specific detailed confidence score like, I'm 99.997% sure this is fraud, which gives an attacker a lot of information to help rebuild the model's internal logic.
You make it fuzzier.
You reduce the detail to only what's necessary for the legitimate use case. Maybe the output is just high confidence fraud or low confidence fraud.
Yeah.
You're essentially applying a need-to-know basis to the model's output itself. It makes the reverse engineering process much harder, much slower, and potentially prohibitively expensive for the attacker.
That makes sense. Limit the information leakage. Now, let's look globally for a moment. This stuff isn't happening in a vacuum. Multinational organizations face a real patchwork quilt of regulations, right?
Yeah.
The EU, the US, China. They all seem to have very different ideas about how to govern AI.
It's a major headache. They require a really flexible, often modular compliance strategy.
Yeah.
You have the EU AI Act, which is landmark legislation. It's mandatory, it's very focused on fundamental rights, and it uses a strict risk-tiered approach.
Risk-tiered.
Yeah. Systems deemed high-risk things affecting safety, employment, access to credit, fundamental rights face very heavy compliance burdens, mandatory assessments, strict data requirements. The whole philosophy is centered on protecting citizens from potential AI harms.
Okay, that's the EU. What about the US?
The United States, generally speaking, has taken a more innovation-focused approach, at least at the federal level so far. There's a heavy reliance on voluntary frameworks like the NIST AI RMF we just discussed, and leveraging existing laws, sector-specific regulations like HIPAA for healthcare data or existing financial regulations. The primary goal seems to be encouraging development and growth, though that's evolving.
And China. Their approach seems quite different again.
Very different. China's approach is much more centered on state control and stability. They have regulations requiring mandatory security assessments and licenses before any generative AI service can even be launched publicly.
So pre-approval from the government.
Yes, and there are strict, non-negotiable requirements around content filtering, ensuring ideological alignment, and very clear labeling of any AI-generated content. It's about maintaining social and political stability.
So for a CIO running a global company, what's the takeaway? How do you navigate that fragmentation?
The practical reality for most global CIOs is that they have to aim for the highest common denominator, which often means architecting their core AI governance around the strictest requirements, typically the EU AI Act's provisions for high-risk systems. Then they build a modular compliance layer on top to handle the specific nuances and reporting requirements of other key regions like the US and China. It's complex.
Definitely sounds complex. And finally, under risk and compliance, we have to touch on data privacy. AI seems to just magnify all the existing privacy challenges, doesn't it? Especially with its hunger for vast training data sets. This must clash with regulations like GDPR.
It creates profound conflicts. The issue of consent and purpose limitation is right at the forefront. GDPR, for example, is very clear. Data collected for one specific stated purpose generally cannot be repurposed for something else without fresh, explicit, informed consent.
But that happens all the time with AI training, right?
All the time. Data collected for, say, processing an insurance claim might get swept up and used to train a completely new, unrelated AI model for predicting customer churn or assessing future risk, often without the customer ever being clearly informed or consenting to that secondary use. That's a potential GDPR violation right there.
But what about the right to erasure, the right to be forgotten? That seems almost impossible with these huge AI models.
It's technically incredibly difficult, maybe practically impossible in many cases, especially with large language models. Once an individual's personal data gets embedded within the billions, sometimes trillions, of parameters that make up a large, complex LLM,
It's baked in.
it's deeply baked in. The technical effort required to find and completely remove all traces of that specific data without fundamentally damaging the model's overall knowledge and performance, which usually means a hugely expensive, full retraining of the entire model from scratch, is often technically and economically impractical.
So you can't really guarantee erasure.
It's very, very difficult to guarantee complete erasure in a deployed LLM. And on top of that, just the act of consolidating massive amounts of potentially sensitive data from across the enterprise to create these training data sets, well, it creates a highly valuable single bullseye for cybercriminals. A breach of that centralized training data could be catastrophic.
So what's the path forward for CIOs on privacy?
The only really safe and compliant way forward is for CIOs to mandate a privacy-by-design approach right from the very beginning of any AI project.
Privacy by design.
It means embedding privacy thinking into the entire process. That includes strict data minimization, only collecting and using the absolute minimum data necessary for the specific task. It means using rigorous pseudonymization or anonymization techniques on training data wherever possible. And it requires conducting regular, thorough data privacy impact assessments, DPIAs, before any model is even trained or deployed to proactively identify and mitigate privacy risks. It has to be built in, not bolted on later.
Okay. We've spent a lot of time on the enormous risks, the governance hurdles, the compliance headaches. It sounds daunting.
It can be.
But presumably, organizations are tackling this because there's a huge potential reward, right? The whole goal of this investment is value realization.
Exactly. That's the promise.
But the reality seems different. The landscape seems littered with really cool AI ideas, great demos that just died after the initial pilot phase. That phrase you used earlier, pilot purgatory.
Pilot purgatory. It's the AI graveyard where good ideas go to die. The statistics are pretty alarming. Estimates vary, but consistently suggest somewhere between 80% and maybe even 88% of corporate AI projects stall out after the pilot phase. They never reach full enterprise scale or deliver the expected value.
80 to 88%, that's incredibly high. Why? What goes wrong?
This is where most organizations fundamentally misunderstand the challenge. They assume that if the algorithm works well in a controlled lab environment with clean data and dedicated resources.
Yeah, scaling it up is just a technical problem. More servers, more power.
Right. They think it's a linear increase in resources. But it is absolutely not. Scaling AI from a successful pilot to enterprise-wide production isn't just more of the same. Our sources call it a quantum leap.
A quantum leap.
Yes, it requires a fundamental shift in thinking. From building an isolated, bespoke artifact, the pilot model, to engineering durable, integrated, maintainable systems that can run reliably within the messy reality of the enterprise environment.
Okay, so escaping this pilot purgatory, making that quantum leap, where does it start? Is it about better algorithms, better tech?
Surprisingly often, no. It starts with strategic alignment, not technical capability. You absolutely must define the mandate for the AI initiative clearly in business terms.
Not just doing AI for AI's sake.
Exactly. AI initiatives driven purely by hype. Our competitors are using generative AI, so we need a generative AI strategy. Those are almost always doomed from the start.
So the CIO's role is crucial here.
Crucial. The CIO must ensure that every significant AI initiative is anchored to a clear, measurable business mandate. Is it about improving operational efficiency by X%? Is it about enhancing specific customer experience metrics? Is it about unlocking identifiable new revenue streams?
And if you can't articulate that value,
If the value proposition cannot be articulated clearly in business terms that the CEO and the CFO can understand and buy into, then that project probably shouldn't be funded no matter how cool the tech seems.
okay, clear mandate first. What's next? You mentioned assessing readiness.
Yes. Before you even start building seriously, you need to conduct a rigorous, honest assessment of the organization's readiness across what we can think of as the 5 fundamental pillars of AI capability.
5 pillars, what are they?
Basically, do you have the right talent? The necessary data scientists, ML engineers, domain experts. Do you have the right technology stack, the cloud infrastructure, the MLOps toolchain? Is your data foundation actually ready? Is it high quality, accessible, integrated? Do you have the governance structures in place for risk, ethics, and compliance? And critically, are your operating models and business processes actually ready to incorporate and leverage the insights or automation the AI will provide?
That's a comprehensive checklist. And skipping that honest assessment.
Skipping that assessment or being overly optimistic about it leads directly to hitting roadblocks and ultimately failing when you try to move from the pilot to the production phase.
Yeah.
You realize too late you don't have the skills, or the data is unusable, or the business process won't adapt.
Okay, so assume you've got the mandate, you've assessed readiness. How do you prioritize where to actually start. You can't do everything at once.
No, you absolutely can't. The key is to prioritize ruthlessly and focus initially on identifying and executing what you might call high-impact, easy wins.
High impact, easy wins. So quick ROI to build momentum.
Exactly. Look for use cases that offer high potential business value and are technically feasible with your current capabilities and data. Places where the data is relatively clean, the problem is well defined, and the impact is tangible and measurable quickly.
Can you give some classic examples?
Sure. Predictive maintenance in manufacturing or logistics is a great one. Reducing equipment downtime translates directly into saved costs and increased output, very measurable. Or, using AI-powered personalization in marketing and sales, you can directly track the impact on conversion rates or average order value. Another common one is automating fraud detection processes, again, quantifiable savings.
So these early wins achieve two things. They deliver real value, and they build confidence and justification for tackling the harder stuff later.
Precisely. They prove the concept, demonstrate ROI, build internal support, and justify the bigger, longer-term investments required for those more complex, adjacent, or truly transformational AI projects down the road.
Okay, let's talk about actually making that quantum leap scaling up, moving from the successful pilot to enterprise production. You mentioned infrastructure earlier. How does the thinking about infrastructure need to change?
It needs to shift fundamentally from building bespoke, one-off solutions for each pilot to building a shared, reusable AI foundation.
A common platform.
Exactly. Treat each pilot not as an isolated experiment, but as an opportunity to build components of a common modular architecture. This includes things like standardized MLOps, machine learning operations tool chains.
MLOps, we hear that term a lot. Why is it so critical for scaling?
MLOs is essentially the set of practices, tools, and cultural philosophies that aims to deploy and maintain machine learning models in production reliably and efficiently. It's the bridge between the data science lab where models are built and the real-world enterprise factory where they need to run.
So it handles things like deployment, monitoring, retraining.
All of that. Without standardized MLOps practices and tools, every data science team ends up inventing its own way to deploy models, monitor their performance, manage versions, trigger retraining.
Which sounds like chaos.
It is chaos.
Right.
It leads to inconsistent deployments, makes governance almost impossible, creates fragile systems that break easily, and generates huge amounts of technical debt. A shared MLOps foundation brings consistency, reliability, and governability, which are non-negotiable for scaling.
Okay, so the tech foundation is crucial. But you hinted earlier that the biggest bottleneck often isn't the technology at all.
That's right. Overwhelmingly, the single greatest barrier to successfully scaling AI initiatives beyond the pilot phase is organizational resistance and inefficient legacy processes. It's the people and process stuff.
The human element again.
Always.
Yeah.
And this is the part that consistently gets under-resourced and underestimated in AI projects. Which leads us to probably the most critical insight from our sources for any CIO trying to drive AI transformation. It's what we can call the 70% rule.
The 70% rule, what's that?
This is a vital lesson. The research and experience from successful AI implementations strongly suggest that the leaders who succeed dedicate the majority of their project resources, sometimes as much as 70% of the total budget and effort specifically to people and process redesign, not just to building the core algorithms and technology.
70%. That sounds incredibly high. You're saying only 30% goes to the actual AI tech, the data science, the servers.
In many successful large-scale transformations, yes. Think about it. If you spend 90% of your budget building the world's most brilliant AI model, but you completely neglect the 70% of effort needed for change management, retraining people, redesigning workflows.
You've just put a fancy engine in a broken car.
Exactly. You've likely just automated a small part of an inherently inefficient legacy process. The core inefficiency remains. The people resist the change, and the promised value never materializes. The project fails not because the AI wasn't smart, but because the organization wasn't ready to use it effectively.
Okay, let's unpack that 70%. Why is that people and process part so expensive and resource intensive? What does that redesign actually involve day to day?
It involves a lot. It's about fundamentally dismantling old ways of working and building new ones. It often means bringing in specialized process re-engineering experts. It means significant investment in retraining hundreds, maybe thousands, of employees with new skills to work alongside the AI. It means developing entirely new documentation, procedures, support structures. It means redesigning user interfaces and workflows,
And dealing with the fear factor.
and actively managing the inevitable organizational anxiety and resistance to change. You have to proactively, constantly communicate and frame the AI, not as a replacement aiming for job displacement, but as an augmentative tool, something that enhances human capabilities, removes drudgery, and allows people to focus on higher value tasks.
And if you skip that or underfund it,
If you skip that crucial change management piece, the internal organization, the very people whose jobs are affected, will consciously or unconsciously resist the adoption. The project will get bogged down in exceptions, workarounds, lack of engagement. It will eventually die a death of 1,000 cuts, regardless of how technically brilliant the AI model itself is.
okay, so you navigate the people and process, you get the model deployed into production. Is it done then? Can you relax?
Absolutely not. In many ways, the work is just beginning. Once an AI model is live in the real world, there's no resting on your laurels. You need continuous monitoring in production.
Why? What can go wrong after deployment?
The biggest ongoing threat is something called data drift, or sometimes concept drift.
Data drift.
It's the silent killer of deployed AI models. It refers to the inevitable, often slow and subtle degradation of a model's accuracy and performance that occurs over time as the patterns in the real-world data it's seeing start to diverge from the patterns in the historical data it was originally trained on.
So the world changes, but the model doesn't.
Exactly. Customer behavior changes, market conditions shift, new product categories emerge, fraud tactics evolve. The model starts making increasingly poor decisions because the world it was trained to understand no longer perfectly matches the world it's operating in.
And this drift is silent. You might not notice it immediately.
That's the danger. They can be gradual. So robust MLOps practices are essential here too. They must include systems to constantly track the model's key performance indicators in production, detect when significant drift is occurring,
And
critically, automate the process of retraining the model on fresh, relevant data and safely redeploying the updated version. This continuous monitoring, detection, and retraining cycle is vital to maintain the long-term reliability, accuracy, and ultimately, the value of the AI system.
okay, we keep coming back to value. Ultimately, the CIO is on the hook to prove that this massive investment in AI, the tech, the data, the 70% people process change, was actually worth it.
Absolutely. The ROI mandate is non-negotiable.
But measuring AI ROI seems notoriously complex. Our sources highlighted a really interesting, maybe concerning gap here. Something like 92% of early AI adopters report getting positive ROI.
Yeah, they say they are.
But only 64% have actually measured it quantitatively. That's a big difference. Why is it so hard to measure?
It's hard because AI's impact is often multifaceted. It doesn't always show up neatly in a single financial metric. That gap you mentioned, it screams out for the need for a more comprehensive measurement framework, one that captures not just the direct, hard ROI financial, but also the equally critical, though sometimes harder to quantify, soft ROI, qualitative benefits.
Okay, let's break that down. Hard ROI, that's the straightforward stuff.
That's the most direct financial impact, yes. Things like cost savings from labor automation, automating repetitive manual tasks, reducing headcount needs in certain areas, or revenue growth driven by AI, maybe higher sales conversion rates from better personalization engines, or identifying entirely new products or services enabled by AI insights. That's the stuff the CFO loves to see.
Right, the bottom line impact. But you're saying the operational and soft value often justifies the project too, even if the direct financial return isn't immediate or easy to isolate.
Absolutely. Often, the operational efficiency gains are the first and most significant benefits.
Can you give a clear example of measuring an operational metric?
Sure. We referenced a study earlier where customer support agents who started using AI-powered guidance tools were able to resolve 14% more issues per hour. That 14% increase in agent productivity is a concrete, measurable operational efficiency gain.
Okay.
You can also measure things like reduced time to market for developing new software features if AI helps with coding or testing, or reductions in error rates in processes like data entry or order processing, improvements in system uptime or reliability if AI helps predict failures. These operational improvements free up internal resources, improve quality, and speed things up. That's real value.
And then there's the soft ROI. This sounds fuzzier, but you're saying it's critical.
It's absolutely critical because it often directly impacts the organization's long-term health, brand reputation, and competitive positioning.
What falls under soft ROI?
Key things here are improved customer satisfaction. You can track this through metrics like CS scores or Net Promoter Score, NPS. If AI helps deliver faster, more personalized service, customers are happier. And crucially, improved employee satisfaction and retention.
How does AI impact employee satisfaction? Isn't there fear of replacement?
There can be, which is why the change management is key. But if AI is implemented well, focused on augmentation, it can remove the most tedious, repetitive, soul-destroying parts of people's jobs.
Freeing them up for more interesting work.
Exactly, allowing them to focus on more strategic, creative, problem-solving tasks. That generally leads to higher morale, employees feel more valued and engaged, and that translates directly into lower attrition costs. Retaining skilled employees is a massive long-term financial benefit, even if it's harder to put an exact dollar figure on it immediately. That soft ROI must be tracked.
Okay, so to calculate credible ROI, whether hard or soft, what are the prerequisites? What do you need in place?
A few key things. First, you absolutely must establish a clear baseline measurement before the AI project even starts. What was the process efficiency before AI? What was the customer satisfaction before? Without a baseline, you can't prove improvement.
Makes sense. Compare apples to apples.
Second, you need to calculate the comprehensive total cost of investment, not just the software license or the data scientist salaries, but all the costs, including the infrastructure, the integration work, the ongoing maintenance, the monitoring, and critically, that big chunk for training and process redesign. Get the full picture of the investment.
Okay, baseline and total costs, then.
Then you need a system, ideally a centralized dashboard or reporting mechanism, to continuously track all the relevant metrics, hard, operational, and soft, against that initial baseline over time. ROI isn't a one-time calculation. It's an ongoing assessment of value delivery. #BD, securing buy-in and trust. Of course, measuring ROI is one thing, but you also need to secure buy-in for these initiatives in the first place and maintain trust as they roll out.
Right, especially given the costs and the risks we discussed. How do you sell this internally?
It requires tailored communication. You can't use the same pitch for everyone. When you're talking to the board or the C-suite, you need to focus relentlessly on the measurable business value, the financial outcomes, the competitive advantage, the risk mitigation aspect.
Speak their language.
Exactly. But when you're communicating with employees whose jobs might be affected, the focus has to shift. You need to emphasize the augmentation aspect, how it will help them, the opportunities for skill development, the potential for career advancement by working with these new tools. Address their concerns directly and honestly.
And in terms of investment strategy, should CIOs be making huge single bets on AI? Or is there a more prudent approach?
The consensus seems to be that putting all your eggs in one massive moonshot AI basket is generally too risky. A more prudent and common strategy is to adopt a portfolio approach.
A portfolio? Like managing financial investments?
Very similar concept. You diversify your AI investments across initiatives with different risk profiles and time horizons.
How would you categorize those initiatives?
You can think of it in 3 tiers. First, you have your core initiatives. These are typically low risk, focused on improving internal process efficiency, maybe using proven AI techniques. They should offer relatively quick, predictable returns.
Okay, the safe bets.
Then you have adjacent initiatives. These are medium risk. They might involve using AI to create new forms of differentiation in your existing markets, maybe enhancing products or services in novel ways. The payoff might be a bit longer, the outcome less certain.
Pushing the boundaries a bit.
Right. And finally, you have your transformational initiatives. These are the high-risk, potentially high-reward bets. They're aimed at long-term market disruption, maybe launching entirely new AI-driven business models or product lines. They require significant investment and have a high chance of failure, but the potential upside is huge.
So managing that portfolio balances the need for short-term wins with the potential for long-term breakthroughs while hedging the overall risk.
Exactly. It allows the organization to learn and adapt, funding more ambitious projects based on the success and learnings from the core initiatives.
And one final point on securing buy-in and value. We talked about responsible AI, RAI, earlier in the context of risk and compliance. But can RAI actually be framed as a value driver itself?
Absolutely. And this is a crucial shift in thinking for CIOs. Proactively addressing ethical considerations, things like fairness, bias, transparency, accountability, isn't just about ticking a compliance box or avoiding negative PR. It's increasingly becoming a strategic value driver that builds long-term customer trust and enhances brand reputation.
How so?
Well, think about it. In an age where consumers are increasingly aware of and concerned about how their data is used and how algorithms make decisions that affect them, demonstrating a genuine commitment to responsible AI practices becomes a competitive differentiator. It builds trust.
And trust leads to loyalty?
Trust leads to loyalty, willingness to share data, and ultimately, sustainable business. The evidence is starting to bear this out too. Our sources indicate that some research shows firms with comprehensive, well-implemented RAI governance structures actually tend to earn significantly more profit, perhaps even twice as much from their AI efforts compared to firms that don't prioritize it.
Wow, twice as much profit. That's a compelling link.
It is, because trust, in the age of AI, isn't just a nice-to-have. It's arguably becoming the fundamental lubricant of commerce. Demonstrating responsibility directly translates into sustainable competitive advantage and financial performance. RAI is good business.
Okay, we've covered risk, we've covered value realization. Now we come to the third leg of that strategic triangle, the foundation upon which everything else rests: the data.
The bedrock. Absolutely fundamental.
We all know the old GI Go principle, right? Garbage in, garbage out. But with AI, it feels like that principle is amplified massively.
Exponentially. If your underlying data is inaccurate, incomplete, inconsistent, or biased, then the incredibly sophisticated, expensive AI model you just built will simply automate bad decisions or perpetuate unfairness, potentially at enormous scale and speed.
So data quality isn't just important, it's the absolute non-negotiable prerequisite for trustworthy AI.
It is the prerequisite. And the reality in most organizations is, frankly, pretty dire. Poor data quality is consistently cited as one of the leading causes, if not the leading cause, of AI project failure.
And it costs money, too.
Huge amounts. Estimates suggest poor data quality costs organizations something like $15 million annually on average through wasted resources, bad decisions, missed opportunities, compliance failures.
Wow. And how bad is the data typically?
Some sources state starkly that in a typical large enterprise, maybe only 3% of the available data actually meets basic quality standards suitable for reliable analytics, or AI. Just 3%?
3%. That's terrifying. It means the CIO's biggest challenge might not even be the fancy algorithms, but just getting the basic data right.
For many organizations, yes. Sorting out the data foundation is the heaviest lift and the most critical task.
Okay, so what defines good data then? What makes data truly AI ready? It's more than just being accurate, presumably. Our sources mention 6 key dimensions.
That's right. It's a holistic view of data quality. You need 1, accuracy. Obviously, is the data correct? 2, completeness. Are there missing values? This is critical, as incomplete data, especially historical data, is a major source of representational bias in AI models. If your past hiring data is missing information for certain demographic groups, any AI trained on it will likely perpetuate that bias.
Okay, accuracy, completeness. What else?
3, consistency. Is the data format uniform across different systems? Is California represented as CA, California in different places? 4, timeliness. How up-to-date is the data? This is crucial for real-time decision models. Stale data leads to bad real-time predictions. 5, relevance. Is the data actually appropriate and useful for the specific AI task at hand? 6, validity. Does the data conform to the defined business rules and constraints? E.g., does an age field contain a realistic number?
So you need all 6 dimensions to be in good shape. And getting there, presumably, isn't a one-time cleanup project.
No, absolutely not. Data quality is a continuous process, not a one-off fix. It requires sustained effort and investment.
What does that continuous effort look like in practice? What are the best practices?
It starts with implementing a formal data governance framework. This means defining clear roles and responsibilities, like having dedicated data stewards who are accountable for the quality of specific data domains.
So ownership.
Ownership and accountability. Then you need systematic processes for ongoing data profiling, understanding the current state of your data, and data cleansing, actively identifying and correcting or flagging anomalies, inconsistencies, and errors.
Can AI help with data quality itself? Seems a bit circular.
It actually can, increasingly so. There are AI-powered tools emerging that can automate parts of this process, detecting complex quality issues, suggesting corrections, even identifying duplicate records across disparate systems. And in some cases, AI can even be used to generate high-quality synthetic data to fill gaps or augment real data sets, especially when real data is scarce or too sensitive to use directly for training.
Okay, assuming you're committed to data quality, there's another huge hurdle for established enterprises. A lot of their most valuable historical data, the stuff AI could really learn from, is often trapped.
Tracked in rigid, siloed, often ancient legacy systems, mainframes, old ERPs, custom-built applications from decades ago.
Right, and just ripping those out and replacing them with modern systems, that's usually not feasible, is it?
For most large, complex organizations, A full rip-and-replace strategy for core legacy systems is simply too risky, too disruptive, and prohibitively expensive. It's often politically and financially impossible.
So, if you can't replace them easily, how do you get the valuable data out in a clean, usable way for modern AI tools? What are the strategic integration approaches?
The focus has to be on creating clean connections and interfaces without having to fundamentally re-engineer or destabilize those fragile legacy cores. The most effective and common technical strategy today is often an API-first strategy.
ATI first, build application programming interfaces.
Exactly. You focus on developing standardized, well-documented APIs that act as a sort of abstract contract or bridge between the legacy system and the outside world. These APIs provide clean, structured access to the needed data or functions within the legacy system.
Without requiring the AI tool or the modern application to understand the messy internal complexity of the old system.
Precisely. The API essentially isolates or encapsulates the legacy complexity behind a standardized modern interface. It allows AI tools to get the data they need without deep, complex, and risky modifications to the underlying core architecture.
Okay, APIs are one way. Are there other approaches if building APIs is difficult for a particular legacy system?
Yes, another approach is using what you might call non-invasive AI layers. These are intelligent software solutions that essentially sit on top of existing legacy systems.
How do they work without touching the core?
They might use techniques like intelligent data virtualization or even advanced AI-powered screen scraping or robotic process automation, RPA, to extract information or interact with the legacy application through its existing user interface, again, without modifying the core system's code. It's less ideal than APIs, but sometimes necessary.
And what if the problem isn't just accessing data, but the legacy system itself is one giant monolithic application that you want to inject AI into?
For those large monolithic applications, the strategic approach is often modularization. You gradually, carefully start decoupling the big monolith into smaller, more independent components or microservices.
Breaking it apart piece by piece.
Yes. This makes the whole system less brittle and, crucially, makes it much easier to insert targeted, flexible AI functions like a fraud detection module or a recommendation engine directly into the specific parts of the business process where they're needed without destabilizing the entire application.
Okay, so we're integrating legacy, focusing on quality. This leads us to the bigger picture of how we structure our modern data architecture. Our sources suggest the choice here, like data lakehouse, data fabric, data mesh, isn't just a technical preference.
No, it's much more than that. It's a deeply strategic decision that reflects the organization's fundamental operating model, its culture, and especially its philosophy on data ownership and governance. Is data controlled centrally, or is it decentralized out to the business domains?
So the architecture choice is a C-suite level strategic decision, not just an IT decision.
Absolutely. It has huge implications for how the business operates.
Yeah.
We basically see three dominant modern architectural blueprints emerging. First, there's the data lakehouse.
Lakehouse, what's the core idea there?
The lakehouse represents the evolution of centralized data management. It aims to combine the best of both worlds. The low-cost, flexible storage of a data lake, good for raw, unstructured data, with the structure, governance, ACD properties, atomicity, consistency, isolation, durability, and transactional capabilities of a traditional data warehouse.
So one unified, centralized platform for most data.
That's the goal, a single source of truth managed centrally.
So who is the lakehouse best suited for?
It's generally a good fit for organizations that really value having that single, tightly governed source of truth, maybe organizations looking to consolidate multiple legacy data warehouses and lakes, and typically those that prefer or already have a strong centralized data team structure.
What are the potential downsides?
The main risk is that the centralized platform and the central data team can become a bottleneck, potentially slowing down access to data or responsiveness to the needs of individual business units if the central team can't keep up with demand.
Okay, that's lakehouse centralized evolution. What's the next option?
Next is the data fabric. Think of this as an intelligent integration layer.
Integration layer, so it doesn't store all the data centrally.
No, that's the key difference. A data fabric aims to connect disparate distributed data sources, maybe on-premise systems, multiple public clouds, edge devices, geographically dispersed databases, using techniques like data virtualization and embedded intelligence like AI-powered metadata catalogs. It allows you to access and query the data where it resides, minimizing the need for costly, complex, and often slow data movement and duplication.
Ah, so it leaves the data where it is, but provides a unified way to access it.
Exactly. It provides a virtualized, unified view across a distributed data landscape.
Who would benefit most from a data fabric architecture?
It's often a compelling approach for very large, complex enterprises that already have a highly heterogeneous data environment. Lots of different systems, maybe data spread across multiple clouds or continents where physically centralizing all that data into a single lakehouse is simply impractical, too expensive, or maybe even prohibited by data residency regulations.
What's the trade-off with a fabric?
The main benefit is agility and potentially reduced data movement costs. The trade-off can be greater complexity in ensuring consistent governance, security, and data quality across all those distributed source systems, since the data itself remains spread out.
Okay, lakehouse, centralized, fabric, intelligent integration. What's the third model?
The third model, and arguably the most radical departure, is the data mesh.
Data mesh. This one seems to generate a lot of buzz and maybe some confusion. What's the core philosophy?
Data mesh is fundamentally different because it's as much a socio-technical approach as it is a pure technology architecture. It's heavily focused on organizational change and decentralization.
Decentralization of what?
Decentralization of data ownership and responsibility. The core idea is that responsibility for data shifts away from a central IT or data team and out to the specific business domains that create or understand the data best, like the finance domain, the HR domain, the sales domain, the manufacturing domain.
So the business owns its own data.
Yes. And crucially, they treat their data not just as raw material, but as a data product.
Data as a product, what does that mean?
It means each domain is responsible for making its key data assets available to the rest of the organization in a way that is easily discoverable, understandable, trustworthy, secure, and interoperable. They package their data like a product, with clear documentation, defined quality standards, SLAs, and dedicated ownership. They become the producers and servers of high-quality, reliable data products for consumption by other domains.
Wow, that sounds like a massive cultural shift for most organizations. Who is the data mesh best suited for?
It's generally considered best suited for large, complex, often already fairly agile organizations that are ready and willing to undertake that significant cultural transformation towards decentralized data ownership, accountability, and governance. It requires strong buy-in from business leadership.
So if the mesh decentralizes ownership out to the business domains, what happens to the traditional centralized data team? Do they just disappear? And how do you possibly enforce data quality standards when dozens of different business teams own their own data products?
Great questions. The centralized data team doesn't disappear in a data mesh. Its role transforms. It typically becomes an enabling platform team.
Enabling platform team.
Yes, their focus shifts from owning and managing all the data themselves to providing the self-service infrastructure, the common tools like standardized MLOps tooling, data catalog tools, the shared services, and the overarching governance frameworks and standards necessary for the distributed domain teams to successfully build, deploy, and serve their own high-quality data products. They become enablers, not gatekeepers.
Okay, they provide the playground and the rules. And how is quality enforced across those domain-owned products?
Quality is typically enforced through a combination of automated checks built into the platform, clear data quality standards defined centrally, and, importantly, data contracts or service-level agreements, SLAs, that each domain's data product must meet when it's served to consumers. If a data product doesn't meet the agreed-upon quality or reliability standards, there are consequences. It requires a high degree of organizational maturity and collaboration.
So mesh offers potentially the most agility and scalability by aligning data ownership with business expertise, but it also requires the biggest cultural overhaul and mature governance.
That's a good summary. It's powerful, but definitely not the right fit for every organization. The choice between Lakehouse, Fabric, and Mesh really depends on the company's scale, complexity, culture, and strategic goals. Now, regardless of which of those architectural blueprints you choose, whether it's the centralized Lakehouse, the integrated Fabric, or the decentralized Mesh, you still need overall command and control. You need robust governance.
Right, governance doesn't go away just because the architecture changes.
Not at all. In the context of AI, this means establishing a clear AI governance framework that aligns with those external standards we talked about, like NIST, the EU AI Act, and extends oversight across the entire AI model lifecycle, from design and data ingestion through training, deployment, monitoring, and retirement.
And this is where a perhaps less glamorous but utterly critical discipline comes back into the spotlight: Master data management, MDM.
Absolutely critical. MDM often gets overlooked or underfunded, seen as just back office data cleanup. But in the age of AI, robust MDM is being elevated to a core strategic enabler. It's indispensable.
Why is MDM so indispensable for AI success? What does it actually do?
MDM is the discipline focused on creating and maintaining the golden record, a single authoritative, trusted source of truth for the organization's most critical data entities. Think about core concepts like customer, product, supplier, location, employee.
It resolves conflicts. If the sales system has one address for a customer and the service system has a slightly different one.
MDM's job is to reconcile those discrepancies, cleanse the data, remove duplicates, and establish the single, consistent, high-quality master record who that customer or product or vendor that can then be shared and trusted across the entire enterprise.
Okay, I see why that's important generally. But what's the specific impact for AI? Why is that golden record so vital?
Imagine trying to build a trustworthy AI system, say, one for personalized marketing or for assessing customer risk, if it's being fed inconsistent, conflicting, or duplicate data about the same customer from different source systems.
The AI's predictions or recommendations would be unreliable, potentially biased, right?
Exactly. The AI model would be learning from garbage, essentially. That clean, consistent, high-quality master data created by MDM is absolutely essential for building reliable, unbiased, and ultimately effective AI systems, particularly for complex, cross-functional use cases.
Can you give a prime example of a use case dependent on MDM?
The classic example is achieving a true customer 360 view. This is the holy grail for many organizations, having a complete, unified understanding of each customer across all touchpoints, their purchase history, service interactions, marketing engagement, maybe even social media sentiment.
And Customer 360 powers things like hyper-personalization.
Precisely. You simply cannot build a reliable, comprehensive Customer 360 view that enables true hyper-personalization without a robust MDM program constantly working behind the scenes to reconcile customer identities and attributes across all those different sales, service, marketing, and finance systems. MDM provides the trusted foundation.
So the mandate for the CIO here seems crystal clear.
It has to be. The CIO must champion MDM not as a tactical back-office data cleanup cost center, but as a foundational strategic investment that is an absolute non-negotiable prerequisite for scaling trustworthy AI and achieving sophisticated goals like Customer 360. An underfunded, outdated, or neglected MDM program will become a direct and significant bottleneck to any large-scale, high-value AI success. You have to invest in the foundation. Hashtag tag outro.
Wow. Okay, this has been an incredibly detailed deep dive into the CIO's AI imperative. We've really triangulated the challenges and opportunities across risk, value, and that crucial data architecture.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground.
And I think the core message that comes through is that leading this AI transformation requires the CIO to wear multiple hats simultaneously. You have to be a sharp strategist, a diligent risk manager, and maybe most importantly, a really effective organizational change leader.
That's absolutely right. It's as much about leadership and organizational change as it is about the technology itself.
So for you, our listeners, grappling with these challenges in your own organizations, we wanted to distill this down into maybe 3 immediate actionable steps or key takeaways based on the core insights we've unpacked from these sources.
Yeah, 3 things to really zero in on. First, thinking about that security shift. The key action is to mandate continuous AI red teaming for all your high-risk AI systems. You have to start treating your AI models themselves as the new privileged endpoints in your security architecture.
So apply zero trust thinking to your AIs.
Essentially, yes, and implement those architectural defenses we discussed, like reducing output granularity, to actively protect the intellectual property embedded in your models. Don't leave the AI models undefended.
Okay, takeaway 1, red team your AI, protect its logic. What's number 2?
Second, focusing on value realization and escaping pilot purgatory. When you're analyzing potential or ongoing AI investments, actively look for hard evidence that the resources, the budget, the time, the people are primarily being dedicated to that crucial people and process redesign.
The 70% rule again.
Exactly. Is the project plan heavily weighted towards change management, training, workflow redesign, or is it 90% focused on just the algorithm? If it's the latter, be very skeptical about its chances of scaling successfully. That 70% allocation is a strong indicator of potential success.
Okay, value focus means process focus. And the third key takeaway.
Third, and underpinning everything, is the data foundation. The actionable insight here is to recognize and, crucially, communicate upwards that an underfunded, outdated, or poorly governed master data management MDM program is no longer just a technical debt issue. It is a direct and absolute bottleneck to achieving any kind of large-scale, trustworthy AI success, especially in complex, high-value areas like customer personalization.
So fund MDM strategically, not tactically.
Frame it as a strategic foundational investment required for the future of the business with AI. It's not optional anymore.
Great. Red Team AI focus on process for value and invest strategically in MDM. So wrapping this all up, what's the final thought we want to leave our listeners with?
Well, I think the really interesting thing to consider is this. The core technology of AI, the algorithms, the large language models, the raw computing power, it's all advancing incredibly rapidly, and in many ways it's quickly becoming commoditized. It's becoming accessible to almost everyone.
So the tech itself might not be the long-term differentiator.
Maybe not. The argument is that the true, lasting competitive advantage you can gain from AI won't ultimately come from simply having the absolute smartest algorithm or the biggest model. It will come from how effectively you manage to redesign your organization's workflows, your governance structures, your operating models, and most importantly, how you upskill and integrate your people all around that intelligent technology.
So the advantage lies in the organizational adaptation, not just the tool itself.
Precisely. The technology is the catalyst, but the transformation and the competitive edge lies in the human and organizational response.
Which leads to the final provocative thought for you, the listener. Are you truly prepared, as a leader, to drive the deep, sometimes difficult cultural shifts and the fundamental process overhauls that realizing the full potential of AI actually demands? Think about that as you process the insights from this deep dive.